Good evening. Got a call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen, Tuesday, April 9, 2019, at 7:30 p.m. in the automatic chamber. Prayer will be offered by our city clerk, Patricia Piuch, and Alderman Ernie Jetty will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with the spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us, God. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Gidge. Alderman Harriet Gathright. Alderman Dowd. Alderman Clee. Alderman Laws. Alderman Lopez. Alderman Karen. Alderwoman Kelly. Alderman Jetty.
Here.
Alderwoman Malizi Gola.
Present.
Alderman Tenza.
Present.
Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons.
Here.
Alderman Wilshire. We have 11 members present.
Thank you. The acting president would like to note that many of the aldermen that could not make it this evening have been properly excused. Some are ill, and we wish them hope that they're feeling better. And I do know some people are in this chamber who are still suffering, and I'm glad that you're here, so thank you. Okay. Remarks from the mayor?
Yes, Mr. President. Well, first I will try to keep
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I would like to recognize that His Honor James Donchis and Corporate Counsel Stephen Bolton is also present. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm going to try to keep my remarks brief tonight because I know there's a lot of people here who would like to speak in favor of the tobacco and I suppose both sides of the tobacco ordinance. But I wanted to speak about O-1940, which is the ordinance following up on the assessing audit, which creates the position or recreates the position of Administrative Services Director. We've discussed this in committee. The committee has recommended the creation of the position with some amendments, which are fine. But just for the sake of history, the Administrative Services Director was first created in around 1980. Morris Arell was mayor, and the city was reorganizing and modernizing management within the city. And some of you I know about that firsthand. The Administrative Services Director position was created to oversee City Hall departments, including assessing, purchasing, IT, personnel, etc. And it remained as an effective City Hall position, a manager within City Hall, for some decades through the administrations of Morris Arell, myself, Rob Wagner, Don Davidson, Bernie Streeter. Then, early in Mayor Lozo's tenure, she decided to request that that position be changed to a so-called city stat position. That remained in effect for some years, and ultimately that was phased out. But in the administrative services, in the assessing audit, CFO Griffin and Chief of Staff Kim Kleiner recommended that we make a cost-neutral change, which was to eliminate and reorganize, to eliminate the position of Chief Assessor and reinstitute the position of Administrative Services Director. Now, in looking back to history, it turns out that when, at least in the 90s, when there was an Administrative Services Director, there actually was no Chief Assessor. There was a manager of assessing, a person without assessing experience or expertise, certification, but someone who managed the people who did the assessing. Now, I've told the committee, and I think I've told the whole board, that as we move forward, what's going to happen is, and we are going to report to you, the Board of Aldermen, later in the month regarding all of the changes and improvements that have taken place as a result of the audit. In addition, in terms of procedure and workload and many of the things that are now taking place. So we look forward to being able to enlighten you regarding all of the changes. In addition, if we determine or if you believe that we should contract with an outside assessing firm to provide oversight beyond what is being done, but I suggest you hear the report at least before thinking about that, reaching any conclusions, that we certainly can go ahead with that, or if the Board of Aldermen were to recommend in the budget that a head assessor be rehired, certainly you would need to add to the budget to do that, but we would certainly proceed to try to hire such a position, even though we think you should take some time and hear the reporting and make a decision later. The chief assessor's position was one that was very difficult to fill last time, one applicant. It's one reason for what was recommended in the audit. There is now, and the number I think is 190 residential abatement requests. 190 is in line with previous revaluation years. There are another 190 or so commercial abatement requests, but they are different in character in the sense that there's a business really that has evolved regarding seeking commercial abatements. Some property owners just file on every property every year. There are people out there who offer their services free of charge to any commercial owner who wants to seek an abatement, and like a contingency fee on an attorney, agrees to take a share of the profit or the savings. So there is a bit of a business, and I think the residential are different in character from the commercial, in the sense that the residential are really people who, on their own individual homes, believe they were improperly assessed, and certainly they should pursue the abatement process as far as it takes them. There are some abatements that are being granted and others denied by the Board of Assessors. We have instituted some deadlines and other things in the office to try to handle the workflow, to try to complete as many of the abatement requests as possible by July 1, when abatement requests go up to the Board of Land and Tax Appeals or the Superior Court. We met with Commissioner Stepp, who is the DRA commissioner, and her staff. She has said that Nashua is in compliance with all of their requirements right now. And certainly we're going to continue to work with them, as every city and town has an obligation to do, to make sure that the assessing goes well. But they reiterated that we are in compliance with all of their requirements. So I would ask that you enable us to move forward as quickly as possible with the improvement of City Hall operations that will be accomplished by the creation of the administrative services position, not only in assessing but in other areas, and that you pass Ordinance 01940. The only other thing I was going to mention, Mr. President, is the bond issue for the landfill. This will enable us to expand the landfill, so-called Phase 3, to extend its life by 10 to 15 years. Right now, there's maybe a year to a year and a half left on the life of the landfill. The next stage, which has begun, the Public Works has begun to seek to license Phase 4, which would extend the landfill for another 40 years or so. But landfill is a valuable asset. This has, of course, received the recommendation of the Budget Committee, and I ask you to consider it favorably. And, of course, I'm available for questions or comments, but that is all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do members of the board have any response to the remarks of the mayor? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reading a previous meeting and public hearings, there being no objections, I'll declare the minutes of the Board of Aldermen's meeting on March 25th, 2019, March 26th, 2019, and the public hearing conducted by the Committee of Infrastructure on March 27th, 2019, accepted, placed on file, and the reading suspended. Communications requiring only procedural actions and written reports from liaisons.
Communication from Larry D. Goodhue, CEO, CFO, Pennachuck Corporation, relative to the annual meeting of sole shareholder.
There being no objections, I'll accept the communication, place it on file, and refer it to the Pennachuck Water Special Committee. Period for public comment, relative items expected to be acted upon this evening. Folks, may I give you a caution? We've had something like 23 people sign up. The period that is allotted to this is supposed to be 15 minutes. We have a very active agenda this evening. But I want to hear, and we all do want to hear, what you have to say. So when I call you up, please give your name and your address and express your opinions before the board. But however, if somebody else also came up and expressed the same opinion, it would be appreciative if you recognize that somebody else has already spoken, and that would be fine as well, too. And we'll try to get through the list. So that being done, I will now call Andrew Odling to come forward.
It's Andrew Olding.
Thank you. And may I, sir, to you and to others, if I murder the name, your forgiveness, please. Thank you.
You're forgiven. So I'm Andrew Olding. I live at 8 Royal Crest Drive in the south part of Nashua. And I wanted to speak against the smoking bill that's in front of you today. And there's a bunch of points that I'm sure other people are going to be making here tonight. But the big one that I wanted to focus on is one that I brought up when this was first brought on this floor the night of the mayor's State of the City address. And in that address, the mayor spent a lot of time talking about wanting more young people to move to this city. And if you want young people to move to this city, treating 18, 19, and 20-year-olds different than you treat 21, 22, 23, and so on year olds when it comes to the purchase of tobacco, when the rest of the state doesn't operate this way outside of a couple cities, is not the way to do that. This is not the way to grow Nashua. Thanks.
Thank you. Jeffrey Cream.
Hi, I'm Jeff Cream from 7 Celeste Street in the north end of Nashua. I'm here to speak in opposition to the proposed smoking ordinance. I think for a few people in the room probably know, on Thursday the House is going to vote on HB 2, and then there's a definition of what tobacco products mean, which actually differs from the definition we've got in the ordinance here. Specifically, there's a section in the House bill that excludes products that are basically certified by the FDA to be used for smoking cessation, and that's not really in our definition. So we'll end up denying young adults ages 18 to 21 with the ability to purchase products that they might actually want to have access to in order to basically stop smoking. I guess I'd further go to say that there's a portion of this bill that has a re-education camp for the cases when people are repeatedly going back and violating the ordinance. And in general, most of the people who will be going through this will have already gone through 12 or now maybe 13 years of government education, and that still hasn't sunk in, and so I don't really think that additional government re-education is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Cream.
Hi, I'm Melissa Cream, 7 Celeste Street. I'm also opposed to this bill. I agree with AJ and my husband that you're not encouraging young people to move to this city. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. They're old enough to go to war for this country. They're old enough to have a cigarette. They're old enough to have a drink as far as I'm concerned. Leave them alone. Stop meddling in their lives. They're 18, they're adults.
Thank you. Stacy Lawton.
I'm Stacy Lawton, Ward 1 resident, off of Broad Street in Nashua.
Ms. Lawton, could you just state your address?
Yes, 507 Broad Street.
Thank you.
Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm not going to read all of these that I have put out. I had written up something, but in the observance of time, I'm just going to basically say, because I seen the previous public hearings, and I'm sure everyone has, the same things that I was going to say have already been said. You've all heard it. I'm going to say I support this ordinance. I can say from personal experience that when I was 18, yes, I thought it was cool. I thought that it was something that, you know, it was pleasurable, I thought. And in recent times, I have decided to give it up. If I had been forced to wait till I was 21, when my mind was more mature and thinking more appropriately, I would have said, no, I will not smoke. I support this ordinance because we must protect our young people. What I saw in the last hearing, when there was a resident who brought up a bag full of e-cigarettes that were collected at our high schools, I was appalled. I feel as though that should not be going on in our schools. You know, we already have a problem with drugs in our schools. We have problems with a lot of things. We must protect our youth. We must protect their minds until they're fully developed. This is not about taking freedoms away. This is about protecting our young people. And if you're afraid that by voting for this in favor, that you may not get reelected because people might think you're taking freedoms away, don't be afraid of that. Stand up for our young people, protect them, and pass this ordinance. And I hope that the mayor, when it gets to his desk, that he signs it and we make this an effective law in the city of Nashua. And let's make Nashua the prime example of, you know, protecting our youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Valak?
Good evening. My name is Janet Valuk, and I live at 41 Roy Street in Ward 6. And I did talk last week to many of you that were here, but not all of you were here. So I'm just going to highlight a few of what I said last week in lieu of the time and the number of people that do want to speak. First of all, nicotine is highly addictive. In fact, it is as addictive as heroin and cocaine, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse. The Addiction Center reports that according to recent research that the 5 most addictive drugs in order are heroin, alcohol, cocaine, barbiturates, and nicotine in that order. It may seem like we are focusing on vaping right now, but I want to emphasize that the FDA reports that the significant rise in e-cigarette use among student populations has resulted in overall tobacco product use increases of 38% among high school students and 29% among middle school students between 2017 and 2018, which has negated the declines that we have seen in previous years. This is a cause for concern because tobacco use is the leading cause of preventable disease and death in the United States, and nearly all tobacco products contain nicotine. As adolescent brains are still developing, nicotine exposure during youth and young adulthood can change the way the brain works, leading to a lifetime of addiction, and in some cases causing long-lasting effects such as increased impulsivity and mood disorders. Studies also find teens who use e-cigarettes have an increased risk of trying combustible cigarettes. While completely switching from combustible cigarettes to e-cigarettes may potentially benefit addicted adult smokers, no tobacco product, including e-cigarettes, is safe for a teenager to use. For each teen and young adult prevented from becoming an established smoker, this will save them an early loss of life, lost wages due to illnesses, costly medical care, lower productivity, and increased disability. And we don't know all of the issues with vaping, but I do know last week the FDA is investigating whether or not e-cigarettes may trigger seizures in some people who use the nicotine vaping devices. They said Wednesday that it had reviewed 35 reports of seizures among e-cigarette users, mainly in young people, and they did stress that it's not clear whether or not the vaping was the cause of that, but they encouraged the public to report information about the issue. The Surgeon General reported on December 18th that this is his fourth in 10 years from his office, quoting him, "I am officially declaring e-cigarette use among youth an epidemic in the United States." In closing, I'd like to leave you with the same statement that I made last week. This is not a war on tobacco. It's not a war on the stores that sell tobacco or the people that are already smoking. This is in defense of the brains of our children and young adults. And if it's the money that might be lost by the stores is so important, please think about our youth's health, not about the profit. I'm asking you to please not put money above health. Nashua can be an example, as Keene, Newmark, and Dover, and our neighbors to the south, the entire state of Massachusetts has now gone to 21, to send a message to the state that this should be done statewide. And just to let you know what a problem this is in Nashua, as the person that spoke before me said, I guess I am considered the bag lady now. This is what was confiscated from students at both Nashua High South and North since September. There's a large amount, and the majority of the students in the high schools are under 18. But also a survey, an academic survey that was administered, showed that 61.5% of youth who reported current use get their devices from someone that is legal other than a parent. Thank you very much for your time. As you can see, I'm very passionate about protecting our youth, and hopefully this important ordinance that Alderman Jettie is proposing will pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Board of Aldermen. My name is Justin O'Donnell. I live at 355 Main Street in Nashua. Some of you may know me. I have run for federal office here in New Hampshire several times. I am, again, seeking federal office in 2020 as an independent candidate, and I usually campaign on a platform of leaving all legislative and policy decisions to the most local level possible, which should be boards like yourself in a town or a city. However, just because I want to make those decisions at the most local level possible to keep the state and federal governments from meddling in people's lives, to give the most local control, doesn't mean that exerting as much local control as possible is the right answer. Now, I understand all the fears and the hopes that we can do something to better the health of the children and our teens in our high schools. However, emotions don't make for good public policy. Emotions ignore the facts. Emotions don't recognize that this bill you're voting on does not ban possession. It doesn't even penalize anyone for possession. It only penalizes students for the attempt to purchase. It only penalizes 18 to 21-year-olds if they attempt to purchase it and the stores that will sell it to them. It also exempts online sales. It doesn't prohibit anyone from purchasing anything online unless the distributor and retailer is in Nashua. Because an outside business doesn't care what your laws are. They care about their profit margin, and that's it. Overseas sellers from China and Europe ship the vaping products. I've purchased them online myself. There is no age verification. They don't care as long as you pay. They don't care where it comes from. Our concern is about the kids in the schools who are getting access to these when it's already illegal for them under 18 to purchase them in the first place. And the studies show, they do show, that these students get their vaping products and their tobacco products from people other than parents over the legal age. The same people they get their alcohol from and their marijuana from. Things we've already banned and made illegal for kids under the age of 21, yet still hasn't stopped. All this bill will accomplish is to create an anti-business environment by driving those sales outside of Nashua, because it's not illegal in Merrimack. It's not illegal in Hudson for 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds. It's not illegal in Manchester for anyone. You'll create a black market. You'll create an increased value for those who do travel to purchase them and bring them back to the kids who want them. You won't solve the problem. You'll create a bigger one. This bill has no teeth of enforcement. This bill doesn't solve the problem. It just creates new ones. It's a bill proposed on a motion to do something good without recognizing that the public policy is more important and noting how it's going to affect the community as a whole. Our businesses in Nashua, some rely on tobacco sales. Small businesses, small independent family-owned convenience stores that operate on a tiny margin of profit to begin with. Rely on the fact that we're competitive and people from Massachusetts drive up here to buy their tobacco a carton at a time because we haven't legislated away their ability to do what they want. You will create a patchwork of regulation. You will create a disparity in law between Nashua and Merrimack and other states. And while I usually advocate for the most local level of control, if you're going to do something like this, one, it has to have teeth to enforce it. And two, it would have to be statewide. Because as of now, there is no incentive for someone who lives on the border to just not drive to Merrimack, Hudson, Manchester. It's not that difficult to get them and bring them back to Nashua when there's no punishment for doing so. So this ordinance as amended is a waste of everyone's consideration as far as I'm concerned, because it will change nothing. And I understand the concerns. I agree with the concerns. I started smoking at 16. I've been quitting for 13 years now, I say. It is incredibly addictive. It's very difficult to overcome. But if we're going to argue that 18-year-olds aren't emotionally or mentally mature enough to make that decision for themselves, then why do we let them vote? Thank you.
Thank you. Jorel Nieves?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jerome Nieves. I'm 18. I go to Nashville South. I live at 9 Forge Drive. You know, I'm gonna leave all the big facts to them. They got all that, but I'm just here to say that like this bill will prevent, our youth to, make it harder for them to, find ways to get it, and that's really all I had to say. Enjoy the rest of the time.
Thank you. Desney Bueso?
Hello, my name is Destiny Bueso. I live at 86B Kinsley Street. I'm here to support this new law. I believe that I represent the youth here in Nashua. And from personal experience, I know that a lot of high schools, middle schools, they all have access to this. And they all start addiction early. And I do believe that we are the future, and if we keep this up, it will not end well. And I do believe that this may not ban anything, as the gentleman said before me, but it is a first step in getting somewhere, because you must take steps forward to get to your destination. Thank you.
Thank you. Albie Busnitz?
Hello, I'm Albie Budnitz. I live at 27 Wheaton Drive here in Nashua. I first will not reiterate, but just support. I'm here to support Mr. Jetty's bill, and I will support everything that Jen Valuk said prior. I just want to make maybe 2 or 3 new points. I think the most important point, well, one that was brought up earlier, vaping is not FDA approved for tobacco cessation. It may be at some point, and that's being looked at, but it is not approved for tobacco cessation right now. Number 2, by increasing the age to 21, it will not solve all problems, but is part of a community-wide comprehensive program that has proven with combustible tobacco use to be probably the second most important advance we've made in the last 70 years in public and population health after vaccination, which is another story, but we won't get into that tonight. But I teach public and population health to 3rd and 4th year medical students at Dartmouth and at University of New England, and this is what they're getting. 2 more points. One is that increasing the age to 21 has been shown, and I have the backup data for that, to reduce initiation of use by 12 to 17-year-old kids by 20 to 30%. That in turn results in remarkably reduced morbidity and mortality later in life. It is not like opioids where you die then at 18 or 20 or 30. You don't die till you're old at 40s and your 50s or 60s, and I'm well beyond those decades. So I fortunately haven't smoked. but it will save that morbidity and mortality for our youth when they get older. Finally, just to reiterate Jan's point, the brain is not fully developed until the mid-20s, maybe the early 20s for girls, mid-20s for boys. And those brains are unbelievably susceptible to nicotine, which is a gateway drug to opioids and alcohol. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Alberg.
Good evening, Mike Affelberg, 7 Edson Street, proud resident of Ward 3. Speaking here in support of the Tobacco 21 legislation. According to Stanford University and the National Institutes for Health, as Jan and Albie mentioned, the brain is developing through the age of 25. And up to that point in time, it is therefore more susceptible to becoming addicted. Addiction is a brain disease. We have come to learn this. The problem with nicotine is that every time you take a hit off of a cigarette or a vaping device, every hit that you get of nicotine corresponds to a hit of dopamine being released in the brain. And that's what makes this drug, nicotine, so addictive in and of itself. Now, nicotine has not necessarily been proven to be carcinogenic, but it has been shown to have a strong linkage to cancer. It is definitely known to create cardiovascular, respiratory, gastrointestinal diseases. It decreases your immune response, and it can have harmful effects on your reproductive life in later years. One of the things that we've heard as an argument why we should not move forward with this legislation is because you can do a lot of things at the age of 18. We can send, and how many times have we heard this evening, and also in social media, you can send kids off to fight for us in war at the age of 18. I would remind you, there are some things you can't do at the age of 18. And there's reasons for that. You cannot purchase and consume alcohol. You cannot go to a nightclub. You can't drive a school bus. You cannot adopt a child. You can't fly a commercial airplane. You can't rent a car. You cannot buy a handgun or ammunition for that handgun according to federal law. And in Massachusetts, at least, you cannot purchase marijuana. So why is it that we limit those things to people for later years? It's because we know that adolescents are not ready to make each and every decision in life. And so that could include the smoking of tobacco products. You're also going to you've heard this argument about, well, you can go to Hudson, you can go to Merrimack. I understand that argument, but we can also be the first. We're the second largest city in the state. We can be the first of those 2 large cities to prohibit this, and we can be the first then to lead a movement to hopefully make this a statewide initiative. So I do hope that you will consider supporting this legislation as it's written or as it might be amended. Thank you very much.
John Shayer.
Good evening, everyone. So I am personally not a resident of Nashua, but I am here representing the convenience stores. I'm the executive director of the New England Convenience Store Association, and I have a number of members, specifically Noria Shell at 190 Amherst Street. So as I said, I'm the executive director of the New England Convenience Store Association, and what we have is we have a vape problem, and we do. We clearly have a vape problem. Nobody is questioning that. Nobody is questioning the harmful effects of nicotine or Juul or any of that. Granted. What we're here tonight to talk about is whether or not raising the age to 21 is an effective policy. Is it going to solve the problem? Are we going to balance with what hardships is it going to create for both adults here as well as the businesses here? 20.8% of high school students in the latest National Youth Tobacco Survey are vaping, are using e-cigarettes. Cigars, cigarettes, smokeless have all fallen since 2011. And so the logic here is if an 18-year-olds are still in high school largely, and therefore raising the age essentially blocks that pipeline. And that's I guess that makes sense logically, but the logic is flawed because it isn't an effective obstacle because it doesn't address really important loopholes such as online access, cross-border sales, or even the social sourcing, frankly, that it seeks to plug. In fact, at the state SB 248, which was a similar bill to raise the age to 21, our association did not oppose. And we didn't oppose it because it was statewide. We do oppose this because an individual city or town, for that matter, does not effectively, it will not effectively do what it seeks to do because there are just too many other loopholes. It doesn't take much to go to another town to buy these products. And someone earlier said about the black market, it will happen. And what it also will do is it will harm the convenience stores, my members, because these sales are now going to be exported to these other towns. And it's not just the tobacco sales. It's the bread, it's the milk, it's the gas, it's everything else. It's the market basket, as we refer to it. So this board, which is certainly has the people of Nashua in mind, should also, I hope, have the businesses of Nashua in mind, the people that hire, invest in their community. And that business will be exported. And I should say, retailers do stand with tobacco. There's a 97% compliance rate in this city among retailers. They're doing their job. What you may not know is, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, but the state took in $245 million in tobacco-related revenue in the latest fiscal year, spent $140,000 on tobacco control programs, a paltry $140,000. No wonder we have an epidemic. I mean, I do a lot of cities and towns in all over New England, and often I hear kids don't know it's addictive, parents don't know what to look for. I have no doubt. I have no doubt when New Hampshire and other states are spending so little on education and cessation programs. So here we are. We're looking. Well, let's raise the age and let's in effect punish the retailers. And I know that isn't the direct reason for doing it, but it is effectively what happens when there are alternatives. And finally, and someone mentioned it earlier, this bill does not address, or this ordinance does not address use and possession. Someone said there's no teeth, and that's true. So if all we're going to do is raise the age and continue to point the finger at those that are selling it and not point the finger at those people that are using it, possessing it, and using it when they shouldn't be, what are we telling our youth? Smoke them if you got them. If you get them, great, smoke them. I see officers in the audience. They wouldn't be able to do a thing. So I leave you with that. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We don't have a question period, but thank you, sir, for your comments.
Thank you very much.
David Garafello.
Hello, my name's David Garofalo.
Garofalo, thank you.
15 Spitbrook Road here in Nashua, New Hampshire. I own and operate Two Guys Smoke Shop. At Two Guys Smoke Shop, we don't sell cigarettes, we don't sell vape, we don't sell chewing tobacco, we sell cigars. But we're grouped in with this, with all other tobaccos. Apparently, it looks like vape seems to be the problem, but we become one of the unforeseen consequences with this. Currently, the legal age to purchase tobacco in the United States is 18, and New Hampshire it's 18. Today, the city of Nashua is considering overstepping its boundaries, as far as I'm concerned, and trying to overstep the state and national laws. Talking about rights, you are considering taking away a 20-year-old adult's rights, a person who can go into legal contracts, an adult who can be sued or sue somebody, an adult who can vote, join the military, go to war, get married and divorce, serve in a jury, have children, and I believe can adopt a child also, even though I heard contrary here in New Hampshire. These adults have rights and can do all this, but for some reason people think they shouldn't be allowed to make a decision to buy a tobacco product or not. But that would only be in Nashua, New Hampshire. If they do commit this crime, they would be charged as an adult. But I understand that that has been taken off the docket here today also, and that's because it turned out to be an illegal act. Unrealistic and an appropriate legal act for a 20-year-old adult who can use tobacco product now and suffer legal consequences if they continued, effectively encouraging to circumvent the law and exercise rights currently available to them today. Talking about money, this action would have a direct negative fiscal impact on the state tax collected, in addition to our very own Nashua retailers such as myself. Retailers will experience a sales decline of a legal tobacco product to a legal aged adult, and only in the city of Nashua. The city would not only restrict the rights of a Nashua adult 20 years old, but at the same time hurt the Nashua businesses only. The brick and mortar retailers who are already struggling, like all brick and mortars, to compete online. Consumers can buy in the next city or buy the products online with no consequences. It won't stop anybody who wants it. It'll just take away the sales away from the retailers in this state, including myself. It will hurt New Hampshire businesses and nothing more. As many adults from neighboring higher state tax, such as Massachusetts, currently purchase tobacco products in New Hampshire, the revenue loss for the state will be considerable. As the highest, I do the highest cigar sales in the United States of America, maybe the world, at Two Guys Smoke Shop with cigars, and will be directly affected in a major way. Nashua is a border city, and the reason why I moved my business from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. I look at other costs, law enforcement, if they are to somehow try to control this, the cost that would happen in the time and man hours that it would take away from the violent crimes and drug epidemic we have. Also, the increased tensions would be taken away man hours from them. Talking about the law, at the same time, you should look at possible lawsuits that could happen if this action was to take place. The Attorney General in New Hampshire believed that Nashua was overstepping its boundaries, and that's why the change we have from last week into what we have here today. New Hampshire uses Dillon's rule, which is not the home rule status, meaning Nashua government may engage in an activity only if it is significantly sanctioned by the state government. This is not this action that's going to take place. Nashua cannot make it a crime to possess and use tobacco. Once again, a reason for the change to someone in New Hampshire. But I'll go as far as to say that this would also happen if the age was changed in this state, and we'll have to let the courts decide on that. A yes vote would only hurt the sales to retailers here in Nashua, New Hampshire, and not stop the use or possession for sure. I expect it to be unconstitutional with the sales as well. There's no upside. Lastly, employees. Part-time summer help that I may hire from year to year that is typically somebody going to college. And with me is one of my employees that started with me when he started college. He went through his college years and then decided to stay with us. He's now with our company for 25 years, and he's not the only one. Please leave these actions to the state and federal government where they belong. This is not and should not be a Nashua Board of Aldermen issue. I believe you're overstepping your boundaries and trying to hurt small businesses within your city only. That is not the position here that should be taken. You're here to help us, I hope. That's why I moved up here. U.S. Congress has introduced a bill to do this nationally and has added age verification for online vaping products, which doesn't exist right now. Right now, 70% of tobacco products, excluding cigarettes, is sold online. 70%. The other 30% is for the struggling brick-and-mortar retailers that are out here. This change will do nothing. If they want the product, they can get it. And vape seems to be what I'm hearing from the crowd here and what I heard from the committee in past hearings. The problem becomes vape. We don't sell vape. We don't carry vape. We're stuck in with all other tobacco products, and it's not fair. Nashua needs to take a step down and stop the overreaching from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Santa Maria?
Good evening. Hi, I'm Ed Santa Maria. 15 Spitbrook Road, Nashua, New Hampshire, and I work at Two Guys Smoke Shop. I am in opposition of this ordinance as written. It does not curb use or possession. Past committee meetings, we heard Alderman Wilshire say that she thinks that people are going to go elsewhere to buy these products. They will go elsewhere. They'll go to Hudson, Merrimack, as other people have mentioned. Right now, they go elsewhere to Nashua, New Hampshire, from Massachusetts, from surrounding areas. If you've been to the mall on the weekend, there's a lot of mass plates. That's business that's going to be lost. This ordinance is an attack on local businesses, all businesses, like I said, the mall, restaurants, other establishments. It's not good for business in the Nashua area, and I understand the pleas of those in favor, but this does not curb use or possession, and I think that it's not going to solve the problem in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Elliott.
Hi, I'm Stephen Elliott, 256 Pine Street, Ward 6. In about 2012, a couple years after states started implementing bans on texting while driving, all the studies showed that texting-related accidents increased in those states, including fatal accidents. And so one thing to do when you're looking at laws like this is to ask what are the unintended consequences. And what you'll probably see is, since people between the ages of 18 and 21 are the poorest people, the fines are going to make them even poorer. And that means that if you look at the data, poor people have higher birth rates. And so you'll have people that are smokers having higher birth rates, which will probably increase the amount of smokers in the long run. So your law probably won't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Cromer Baden, if, I apologize.
Hi, I'm Quinn Barden.
Quinn.
I live at 7 Royal Crest Drive in Nashua. My father is British, and in his home country, an establishment may serve a 16-year-old with beer and wine that is purchased by an adult. Not coincidentally, in that country, youth alcohol poisoning and DUI rates are significantly lower than in the US. Adult authoritarian control of addictive substances merely creates a forbidden fruit effect, where the targeted substance becomes that much more attractive simply because it is forbidden by those seen as stodgy or uncool. Thus, this ordinance will be counterproductive in that respect. I would also, you see, reverse psychology here is a genuine phenomenon. And on that, I'd also like to point out that I find it curious that many proponents of these types of restrictive policies also advocate lowering the voting age to something like 16. So apparently, a 16-year-old is qualified to choose someone with the power to initiate a nuclear conflict with Russia, but has to wait 5 years to pick up a pack of smokes. Very curious that. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard Ray.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Aldermen. My name is Howard Ray. I live at 2 Clock Tower Place, 133, here in Nashua, New Hampshire, Ward 4. What we're talking about here this evening really is responsibility. Responsibility for your health, your children's health, and so forth. I find it nowhere that this municipality has the right, moral right, or obligation to tell me how I need to raise my children, especially after he's reached the age of majority of 18. What right do you have over my child and the decisions that I make? I would say as a municipality, none at all. And I would even argue, obviously, as a state, none at all either. My service, I spent 13 glorious years in the United States Army. My service in the United States Army wasn't for a group of local politicians to tell me how to raise my children. It was so that I could make the right decisions on my own, to teach my child that perhaps at 18, he should not smoke. Perhaps he should join the military. Perhaps he may not join the military. Perhaps he does smoke. That's my decision and his on his own. It's not yours. About these education camps that were mentioned earlier, you're going to send 18-year-olds to tell them what not to do. And as soon as they pay their $50, they're going to go back to their home and they're going to pick up their e-cigarette and go, well, that was nice. And they paid their $50 and it's a wash. And they get caught again and who cares? Not the people that want to smoke, not the people that are 18 years of age or older. And I'm going to tell you, as a person who is 18 years of age or older, you can buy a shotgun, you can buy a rifle, you can become a pilot at the age of 16. So I don't want to hear this idea that 18-year-olds somehow don't have what they need up here in their minds to make the right decisions. They can make the right decisions on their own, especially if they have good parents leading them. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dottie Olden.
Thank you. I'm here to support the ordinance.
You may tilt it down or, yeah, a little assist. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderman Karen.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Dottie Oden, 16 Cathedral Circle. I'm here to support the ordinance tonight. I am a member of the Board of Education, but I am not speaking on behalf of the board. I am speaking as an individual. We have a serious vaping problem at our two high schools, as just about every other high school in the country is dealing with. Within the past few years, our high schools had reduced the number of smoking offenses to only a handful of students. Unfortunately, things have changed. Now we have students who have never smoked a cigarette but are vaping throughout the day. Our schools are being overwhelmed by the growing number of students vaping. We also have a smaller number of students vaping at our middle schools, but if the national trend continues, that number will grow quickly. It wouldn't be a surprise if we had elementary schools students vaping also. Juul is the most popular vaping device. It is used by almost 80% of those who vape, and so popular that vaping is often referred to as juuling. Just this past December, Altria, the parent company of Philip Morris, invested $12.8 billion to purchase a 35% stake in Juul Labs, whose value was placed at $38 million at that time. It certainly appears the big tobacco companies are looking to ensure they will have a new and younger generation to buy their cigarettes, so their profits will continue to roll in. Ironically, the first line of Juul Lab website reads, Juul Lab's mission is to eliminate cigarettes. Our administrators and teachers are spending much valuable time and effort in dealing with the vaping epidemic. Our health teachers have incorporated the dangers of vaping into their curriculum, but sadly, peer pressure and the allure of vaping are strong and difficult to combat. Many parents think that vaping is harmless because of the sweet-smelling flavor and the fact that it is not a cigarette. Of course, this is not true, as a Juul pod contains as much nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. Recently, I read an article that stated, whoa, I'm sorry, I had to cut some of this. The long-term effects of vaping are unknown, but the long-term effects of nicotine are not. And I think that's part of my concern about this, is what past people have spoken to, is how it changes the brain of these young kids who don't realize that for the rest of their life they could be looking at a strong susceptibility to addiction. Our schools need help, and they need it now. I'm asking for your help. We have a great many needs in educating our students, which are not being met due to budget constraints. I ask that you support this ordinance, as there is no money being asked for, only your vote. It will not eradicate the problem, but will send a strong message that vaping is harmful for our kids. It might also free up more time for our administrators and teachers to ensure our schools are safe and students' many needs are being met. We need help in many areas, and this is one. Again, this is not a money issue. I am asking for your vote to send a strong message that this community is supportive of doing what is right and best for our children and their future. Thank you.
Thank you. Louis Alcea.
Hello. I'm Louis Alcier of 28 Mobile Drive, and I am against. It doesn't really make sense that most of my friends under this new bill would not be able to purchase tobacco or whatever else they may be, but like everyone else has alluded to, go overstate elsewhere. Massachusetts has already implemented this statewide. And I would like to, sorry, I'm a little nervous.
You're doing fine, man.
All right. Thank you. New Hampshire is supposed to be about live free or die. And you're trying to take away some of my friends' freedoms. That doesn't make any sense. And I'm speaking for those friends that are already in Massachusetts schools that have to drive up an hour to get their products because of the law that has been implemented in Massachusetts. I had a lot to say, and then Justin O'Donnell literally said word for word everything I had, so. So thank you. That is all I have to say.
Right. Thank you, Louis. You did fine. Sue Newman.
Yes, good evening. Sue Newman, 25 Charlotte Avenue, Ward 2. I support this ordinance. We all have the responsibility, I believe, to make good health decisions in the best interest of our families, our children, our community, and especially for our young people. We all know how dangerous nicotine is. I sent a brief email to you all just yesterday, so I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. But from a site, Tobacco Free Kids, the toll of tobacco in New Hampshire, the following information was put out. 7.8% of our high school New Hampshire kids smoke. 23.8%, just under 24% of our New Hampshire high school kids are using e-cigarettes. The number of cancer deaths in New Hampshire attributable to smoking, 27%. Kids now under 18 and alive here who will ultimately die prematurely from smoking, 22,000. And then getting to the money end of it, healthcare costs in New Hampshire directly caused by smoking, $729 million, and that was reported to be an annual figure. From a February 11th, 2019 FDA report, I'm quoting, "The epidemic use of e-cigarettes among children is one of the biggest public health challenges currently facing the FDA. Additionally, while e-cigarettes might be a successful tool to help currently addicted smokers quit, the sale of these devices just cannot come at the expense of addicting a generation of kids to nicotine." So I thank you, and I close with saying we have the responsibility to make some good decisions for our young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Alsea.
Good evening. My name's Tom Alseer. I live at 28 Mobile Drive in Hudson. I was briefly a state representative from here in Nashua, and those of you who don't remember, my opponent in the Libertarian primary has already spoken here today. On 24 May 1979, Governor Hugh Gallen signed hate crime legislation here in New Hampshire. Hate crime legislation raising the drinking age from 18 to 20 when I was 19. Those of you who remember my brief tenure in the New Hampshire legislature saw just how grateful I was. If it's all about saving lives by hiring gun-toting goons in bulletproof vests who intimidate people into living a healthier lifestyle, you don't win if the targets of the legislation, to whom it is totally unacceptable, spend every waking hour for the rest of their lives like a merciless chess player looking for every possible opportunity to make you wish you hadn't, such as the time I spotted an opportunity to run for New Hampshire legislature. Well, I don't know how you can pledge allegiance to a republic with liberty and justice for all. Liberty is an unalienable right, which by definition preempts the rule of law when the two things conflict with each other, and then promote hate crime legislation against people just because it's easier to pick on people under 21 than it is to pick on people older than 21. I mean, I've heard all the excuses. Oh, sure, drinking during pregnancy harms the baby, so let's impose this on men under 21 and not on pregnant women over 21. The same thing is true of smoking cigarettes. It harms the baby. So let's impose this on men under 21 and not on pregnant women over 21, because it's not as easy to pick on people over 21. And there are libertarian chess moves that would do better. There's a state law forcing businesses to hire smokers. It's illegal to discriminate against applicants that smoke. That denies jobs to people like the gentleman that my son did. When he's out looking for a job, you know, it's not fair that they should pass him over in favor of some smoker if they shouldn't have to. Non-smokers deserve a job more. They won't drive up the cost of the company group health plan as high, and companies can save money. They'll have an incentive to give jobs to people who deserve jobs instead of giving them to smokers. On 14 February 1997 in Manchester, a smoker got into a taxi. It's illegal to smoke in taxis in Manchester, and that's beside the point because the owner of that car said there's no smoking allowed in that car. That's the property right. The smoker would have none of that, and the cab driver wound up drawing a Glock 9mm, fired 8 shots, and extinguished the smoker, and wound up going to prison for second-degree murder as if the cab driver was the one doing something wrong. That has to stop. People have to be able to defend themselves against the smokers. Just like the time the Turkish Air Force shot down a jetliner, a Russian jetliner that was on its way to bomb Syria, cutting through a corner of Turkish airspace. That's how they defend their airspace. That's how non-smokers can defend airspace too. If a smoker and a non-smoker both need a lung transplant, why should the non-smoker who's never smoked in their life wind up dying so that that lung transplant can go to a smoker that deliberately destroyed his or her lungs? There are libertarian chess moves that can make smoking history instead of using unprovoked violence to try to intimidate people into living a healthier lifestyle.
Thank you. Bobby Bagley.
Good evening. I'm Bobby Bagley. I work at 18 Mulberry Street. I don't live in Nashua, but I spend a great deal of time in Nashua, and I have quite a bit of family that lives here as well. A couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to participate in an Awareness is Healing walk with over 300 people who were there to remember loved ones that were lost due to overdose due to their addiction. They were family, they were friends, their hearts were hurting, they were sad, but they were also happy to be there together with their community to make a difference. This issue is about what nicotine does to the brain, how it changes the brain chemistry. Imagine if we could expand the life expectancy, of all of those members in our communities so that they could meet their full potential and contribute to society, living long and healthy lives, free of chronic diseases, free of hypertension, and free of addiction to substances. Imagine if we could extend the time of a young person developing the habit of using tobacco or nicotine to allow for their full development. We don't have to imagine this. We can make this a reality here in Nashua. In support of 019-037. I've heard this economic impact on businesses. A while ago, we passed legislation to not have smoking in restaurants. At that time, there was a thought that business would be lost because people wouldn't go because they couldn't smoke in the restaurants. That didn't happen. What do we know? We know that $729 million were spent on tobacco-related diseases, with 19,000 deaths in 2018. This is a public health issue, and the public health is our entire community's responsibility. And preserving the health of our youth and in this community and the communities abroad is all of our responsibility. I have a letter here from one of the members of our Board of Health who is a pediatrician who practices here, and he did send a letter out to members of the Board of Aldermen. It is a long letter, and I'll just read parts of it. Dr. Capetta does apologize for not being able to be here this evening because of a prior commitment, but he does stand in support of this legislation and does believe in raising the age of purchasing tobacco to 21, and that will include all tobacco-related items such as cigarettes, cigars, chewing tobacco, and electronic vaping devices. The well-known addictive properties of nicotine, which is the main substance in all of these above-mentioned products, is especially relevant to him as a pediatrician for over 30 years. The development of the mature brain does not take place until the age of 25. This fact is well known, is scientifically supported, and is indisputable. As we all know, the brain is the computer control and the tower of the body, and it's made up of a complex system of nerves and neurons that send and receive messages to and from all parts of the body to do everything we take for granted: talking, walking, breathing, movement, digestion, etc. Without these intricacies, series of sequential transmitted messages being passed along from one nerve to the next, like the game of telephone tag we used to do in elementary school, we would not survive. Each nerve cell sits next to each other, separated by a small space called the synapse, much like two neighboring houses on the same street separated by a common driveway between them. In order to get from one house to another, the neighbors need to cross the driveway to get to the other side. Furthermore, in order to actually enter your next-door neighbor's house, with permission, of course, you need to have a specific key to allow for you to enter. This simplistic view of how these friendly neighbors coexist with each other can now be applied to how nicotine affects this transfer of messages. Nicotine is similar to an unwanted intruder in the neighborhood who has somehow gotten hold of the house key and is able to get into that house and to the house next door and cause havoc within. Nicotine acts by attaching itself to one end of the same nerve cells, which in turn triggers the release of feel-good chemicals, such as the hormone called dopamine, that leads to the body's thinking that this good feeling is great and it's wonderful, and it wants to continue to get more and more of this stuff. And who does not like to feel good? This deceptive action of nicotine to stimulate the increased release of good-feeling hormones is the beginning of addiction. These incipient feelings of physical addiction lead to the body wanting more and more of that, which caused such a great rush or high in the first place. Thus, smoking, chewing, or vaping activities increase to sustain this powerful sensation of a great feeling. This, in turn, leads to the hardest part of nicotine usage, the mental addiction, where now the brain is fooled into thinking that the nicotine that was once considered bad is now considered good because of the need to have more and more of it in order to produce the same effect, AKA the definition of tolerance. In this case, more and more nicotine must be taken to reproduce the same initial effects on the body and now on the brain. That is why trying to break the cycle of tobacco, the use and addiction is extremely difficult. The known physical ill effects and consequences of nicotine use causes cancer, hypertension, stroke, and etc. To name just a few, they're taken over by the brain's false thinking that it needs more and more, regardless of the continuing damage of the nicotine upon the body itself. The adolescent brain does not fully mature until 25, and so it's at more risk than the adult brain to be fooled by this negative impact and this cycle that is very sneaky and this very bad home invader. Since the younger brain, under 25, continues to build better and faster driveways or synapses between nerve cells than the older one, the addiction potential is that much stronger and that much deadlier. He apologizes for the length of this letter, but is in full support of the passage of O-19-037 to raise the tobacco purchasing age of 21 without hesitation to allow the developing brains of our future leaders, as we've heard from a couple of youth here this evening, of tomorrow, who will someday be seating in these seats, the same seats that you occupied tonight, more valuable time to not be exposed and traumatized by this powerful and dangerous drug. Dr. Capetta says that he is available to meet and talk with anyone about the things that he submitted in this letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Boland?
Good evening. My name is Ben Boland, and I'm from Southampton, New Hampshire. I'm the Director of Operations of Rapid Refill. I'll keep this brief, I promise. As I mentioned at a previous meeting, we have a convenience store here in Nashua. We are adamantly opposed to cities and towns unilaterally moving the legal age to purchase tobacco to 21. It unfairly impacts licensed retailers in the city and does little to reduce youth access. It will also result in a loss of sales, which in turn reduces labor hours that we are able to allocate to our dedicated employees. I'll reiterate what I said last month, which is that we have a proven process in place that educates our employees on how to effectively sell age-restricted products. In closing, and to be clear, we would fully support moving the legal age to purchase tobacco to 21 if it's done statewide and enacted at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Vignanic, Graves? How bad did I murder it?
That's okay. A lot of people do that. It's Vinayak Graves. Sorry, you can angle the mic. Just watching everybody stoop. It's Vinayak Graves. I live at 23 Soda Ave, Nashua, New Hampshire. Thank you to the Honorable Board of Aldermen and to my fellow Nashua residents for sacrificing your evening for this important cause. As I said, I've been living here for 11 years. I'm currently a high school freshman, and I'm attending an online accredited academy for the last 4 years. So I know we've already heard a lot of statistics tonight, so we could be here all night if I go over them all over again. So I want to give you a quick personal experience. 2 years ago, my elder sibling entered high school, a bright and enthusiastic student. He was a part of the National Juniors Honors. He had a perfect GPA. Slowly he transitioned from I only tried it once to it helps relax me till finally he developed an addiction to vaping. I would like to let you all know that he, going into high school, he wanted to be a lawyer. Now today, due to the effects of vaping, his mental health has suffered greatly, and he is no longer even able to attend the local high school. Numerous times he told me, you can get anything you want at high school. So this is not just about the smoking and the health. This is a business in these schools that these kids, these young children are making into a business. Raising the age from 18 to 21 for the purchase and possession of tobacco products could prevent brilliant students like my brother from going down the dark road of addiction. It would prevent 18-year-old high school students from buying and distributing harmful tobacco products to younger students. According to the American Lung Association, every day roughly 2,500 children under the age of 18 will try their first cigarette. 400 of them will transition to becoming regular day smokers, and half of them will eventually die from their habit. If this pattern continues and we fail to put precautions in place, an estimated 5.6 million of today's youth will ultimately die prematurely from smoking-related diseases. As we've heard earlier tonight, many people have said that this will not 100% fix the issue of smoking, and that's true. It's not 100% going to fix the issue of smoking. But the fact is that if this bill can save one life, then is it not worth it to pass it? If it can save people like my brother from going down these roads, is it not worth it? I know it's not going to solve the problem 100%, but it's a step in the right direction. I also have heard people have said tonight that kids can go to Hudson, they can go to Merrimack, they can go to other towns. But I'd like to remind you all that the city of Nashua has the second biggest population in New Hampshire, with roughly 88,000 residents. Is it not our duty to set an example as a major city in New Hampshire? Today we have that chance to set the bar high and join other communities like Dover, Keene, and Newmarket who have already made changes with regards to smoking. If the second biggest city in New Hampshire can raise the age from 18 to 21 to purchase and distribute tobacco products, what's stopping the rest of the state from following? I'm sure if we can do this today, that Hudson and Merrimack can start a similar movement. It isn't just what we do for our city that counts, it's the example that we set for our other cities that truly matters. The opportunity that we have for our city today is a step towards making all of New Hampshire a better state for our youth. I would like to state a quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt, which states, "We cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future." Today, right now, each one of us has a chance to build our youth for a future of happiness and health. The difference that we make today is a difference that could save lives. The tobacco industry has stated that in 2007 that the smoking industry claimed that in 2007, when e-cigarettes were first imported into the U.S., that they were smoking cessation tools. However, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 20.8% of high school students reported using e-cigarettes, and 4.9% of middle school students reported the same, making e-cigarettes the most popular method of tobacco use for youth in the United States. Unlike traditional cigarettes, e-cigarette marketing is not restricted. Thus, they are being advertised on television, in magazines, at concert events, at music festivals, and sporting events, and kids are noticing. I would like to direct your attention to this advertisement I have here. As we all know, as someone mentioned earlier, Juuls are one of the most common vaping. And as we can see from this advertisement, As we can see from this advertisement itself, the Juul company is advising that we raise the age from 18 to 21. So when the Juul company itself is advising this, then I think we should all be concerned. The fact is, we really don't know what the long-term effects of vaping is. It hasn't been properly researched. But I understand that today this has been less of a debate over the health of our youth, but more of a debate about whether or not we should choose money over our youth. And I think we can all say that the health of our youth is more important than making money for the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I don't know if you could hear them. There's a lot of chatter going on while people are talking.
Okay, but as decorum, can you address it through the chair and just...
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Okay. Advika Aron?
Hello, my name is Advika Rukumar. I'm not a resident of Nashua. Actually, I'm a resident of Londonderry, but I've come here today as a representative of Londonderry and the state of New Hampshire. As stated before by Mr. O'Donnell, when you're 18, you can vote, you can adopt a child, so many other things, but those things that you're allowed to do when you're 18
those do not have biological effects. Things like smoking, drinking, doing drugs like marijuana and cocaine, those all have severe biological effects in the body. And when nicotine is entering an undeveloped body and an undeveloped brain, disastrous effects can happen. And I don't think we want that for our youth, the future of our city. Additionally, I just want to state again that I'm coming here from Londonderry because I really want this to happen, not only in Nashua, but all throughout New Hampshire. I think Nashua would be a great example and set a great example for our country and even our state. I just want to say that nicotine has great severe biological effects. It manipulates the neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, which is very important for muscle movement, heart rate, all things that can easily go wrong when the system is hijacked. Lastly, I just want to end with a quote by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Benjamin Disraeli, from the 19th century. He stated that the youth of a nation are the trustees of posterity. And I feel that the city of Nashua, and maybe even the state of New Hampshire, I feel like we should stay true to this maxim, and we should take care of our youth and our brains. As a representative of the youth of New Hampshire, I hope that this ordinance can be passed. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes 15 minutes of public comment. I would like to say we got through it, and for those of you that did try to remain brief, we really appreciate it. I'm glad that you were heard. Those that really gave it a good college try, we do say thank you, and again, we're glad that you came before us and to be heard. Okay, communications requiring final approval.
Communication from Mayor Jim Donsis relative to the contract award of transit service operations.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes, Mr. President, I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to First Transit, Inc. in the amount of $10,945,301.
We all heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Communication from Mayor Jim Donsis relative to the contract for pump station upgrades project, Phase 1, construction services.
Alderman Jettie.
I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to DeFelice Corporation in the amount of $3,469,550.
We've all heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Petitions.
Petitions for resubmittal of petition for the street acceptance of a portion of Pine and Central Streets.
Alderman Lopez.
I'd like to make a motion to grant the petition for street acceptance for portions of Pine and Central Street.
You heard the motion. All those, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Nomination, appointments, and elections.
To the Honorable Board of Aldermen, I have this day appointed Edward Hayes of 137 Main Street, Nashua, to the Downtown Improvement Committee for a term to expire December 13, 2019. I have this day appointed Philip Sconsis of 169 Main Street, Nashua, to the Downtown Improvement Committee as an alternate for a term to expire December 2, 2021. And I have this day appointed Nicholas Kanakis of 159 Main Street to the Zoning Board of Adjustment as an alternate for a term to expire September 11, 2020, and respectfully request that the confirmations be confirmed.
Thank you. There being no objection, I'll accept the appointments by the mayor as read and refer them to the Personal Administration Affairs Committee. I will now call the joint convention of Edgewood Cemetery Board of Trustees. There being no objection, I will declare the Board of Aldermen meeting a joint convention with the Edgewood Cemetery Board of Trustees for the purpose of electing 2 trustees and call for nominations. Trustee Maffey. Please step to the mic.
Mr. President, the trustees of the Edgewood Cemetery nominate Reverend Andy Armstrong and Morgan Hollis.
Okay. All right, we have nominations of Morgan A. Hollis and Andrew W. Armstrong. Is there any other nominations? Seeing none, I will now close the nominations. With there being no objection. Will the clerk please call a voice vote to be taken for the appointment of Morgan A. Hollis, Andrew W. Armstrong for their Board of Trustees?
Alderman Clee.
I accept the, is that what I say? I accept the nomination of Morgan Hollis and Andrew Armstrong.
Alderman Laws.
I too accept the nomination of Andrew Armstrong and Morgan Hollis.
Alderman Lopez.
Reverend Andy Armstrong and Morgan Hollis.
Alderman Karen.
Reverend Armstrong and Mr. Hollis.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Reverend Andrew Armstrong and Morgan Hollis.
Alderman Jettie.
Andrew Armstrong, Morgan Hollis.
Alderwoman Malizia Gola.
Reverend Andy Armstrong and Morgan Hollis.
Alderman Tenza.
Reverend Andrew Armstrong and Morgan Hollis.
Alderman Schmidt.
Reverend Andy Armstrong and Morgan Hollis.
Alderman Clemmons.
Armstrong and Hollis.
Alderman O'Brien.
Reverend Armstrong and Morgan A. Hollis.
Trustee Andrade.
Morgan Hollis, Esquire, and Reverend Andrew Armstrong.
Trustee Douglas Barker.
Andrew Armstrong and Attorney Hollis.
Trustee Alan Barker. Trustee Cullen. Trustee Charles Hall. Trustee Norman Hall.
Reverend Armstrong and Attorney Hollis.
Trustee Hollis.
Reverend Armstrong, staying on Attorney Hollis.
Trustee Law. Trustee Maffey.
Reverend Armstrong, Morgan Hollis.
Trustee Slattery.
Reverend Armstrong, Attorney Morgan Hollis.
Mayor Donches.
Reverend Armstrong and Attorney Hollis.
We have 18 votes for Morgan A. Hollis and 18 votes for Reverend Andrew W. Armstrong.
Seeing the unanimous vote, I will declare Morgan A. Hollis and Andrew W. Armstrong duly appointed to the Edgewood Cemetery Board of Trustees for the terms to expire March 31st, 2024. There being no, I would like to invite them to come forward to be administrated to the oath of office if they are present.
Morgan's present.
Raise your right hands, please. You solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent Edgewood Cemetery Board of Trustees, according to the best of your ability, agreeable to the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire and the rules and regulations of the city charter. So help you God. Congratulations. Thank you.
There being no objections, I will declare the joint convention now arise. Reports of committee. There being no objection, I will declare the report of March 25th, 2019 Budget Review Committee accepted and placed on file. There also being no objection, I will declare the report of the April 2nd, 2019 Budget Review Committee accepted and placed on file. There also being no objection, I will declare the report of April 3rd, 2019 Finance Committee accepted and placed on file. There being no objection, I will also declare the report of the March 27, 2019 Committee on Infrastructure accepted and placed on file. There also being no objections, I will declare the report of the April 1st, 2019 Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee accepted and placed on file. Confirmation of the mayor's appointments.
Cultural Connections Committee.
There being no objection, I will declare Sandra Pitt of 24 Gingrich Drive, Nashua, duly appointed to the Cultural Connections Committee for a term to expire March 1st, 2022. Yes. Is Ms. Pratt available? Is she? Okay, the oath of office will be administered at a later date. Thank you. Unfinished business resolutions.
Second reading of Resolution 19-114, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $6 million for the Phase 3 lined landfill expansion of the Nashua Four Hills landfill to include engineering services.
Alderman Jettie.
I move for final passage of R 19-114 by roll call.
Okay, there's a motion by Alderman Jettie to call R 19-114 by roll call. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Karen. Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderwoman Malizi Gola.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
We have 11 yeas.
Seeing 11 yeas, motion carries. Resolution R 19-114 declared duly adopted.
Second reading of Resolution 19-117, changing the use of funds for a wastewater fund capital improvements project from Bridge Street Overflow Detention Basin for improvements to wet weather facility screen and rake upgrades.
Alderwoman Malizi Goja.
Yes, I move for final passage of R 19-117 by roll call.
Okay, we heard a motion on R 19-117. Any discussion on the motion?
I would just like to comment, for those who don't see the agenda, the Budget Review Committee recommended final passage, and the Board of Public Works also gave a favorable recommendation for this.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question by roll call.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderwoman Malizi Gola.
Yes.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
We have 11 yeas.
Seeing we have 11 yeas, I'll declare the motion carried. Resolution R 19-117 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of Resolution 19-120, changing the name of Panther Drive to Officer James Roche Drive.
Alderman Tenza.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R 19-120.
We all heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Oh, I should say R 19-120 declared duly adopted. Thank you.
Second reading of Resolution 19-124, naming the intersection at Grand Avenue and North 7th Street, Little League Square.
Alderman Karen.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion for final passage of R-19-124.
We all heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Resolution R 19-124 declared duly adopted.
Second reading of Resolution 19-125, approving the cost items of a sidebar agreement between the Nashua Board of Police Commissioners and UFPO Local 645, professional employees of the Nashua Police Department regarding special projects.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. I would move to amend R 19-125 in its entirety by replacing it with the proposed amendments made by the Budget Review Committee.
There is a motion to amend R 19-125 by replacing it. All those, any discussion on the motion? Alderman Clemmons.
Yeah, the amendment, all it did was put the effective date of the legislation in there.
All those in favor now, any other further discussion? But seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the amendment signify by saying aye. All those in
Aye.
favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, the bill is amended. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. I would move for final passage of R 19-125 as amended.
You heard the motion. All those, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, Motion carries. Unfinished business ordinances.
Third reading of ordinance 18-030, increasing the fees for leased city parking spaces.
Alderman Laws.
I move to postpone 018-030 indefinitely.
Okay. There's a motion to indefinitely postpone. Any discussion on the motion? Alderman Laws.
It's been talked about at length in many other committees, but quick synopsis is it was brought up by Downtown Improvements Committee and Economic Development. We looked into it. We had a lot of unanswered questions, thanks to Alderman Clemmons. Welcome back. And we decided that we will revisit this when the time comes, probably Performing Arts Center related, when we need to do some renovations to the garages. So,
Thank you. Any further comment on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Ordinance 018-030 declared indefinitely postponed.
Second reading of ordinance 19-037, raising the age to purchase, use, and possess tobacco products and e-cigarettes from 18 to 21.
Alderman Clee.
Mr. President, if it's appropriate, at this time, I would like to make a motion to re-refer this ordinance back to committee, and may I speak to that motion?
There's a motion to refer back to committee, which is a high priority motion. You are allowed to speak on your motion.
My comments and the reason for wanting to re-refer this back to committee is simply because there is an ordinance that, an amendment that has been put forward, sent to us, and so on. I believe in the past, when this has happened with this committee, any amendments and so on, it has gone back to the committee. They refer to wanting to basically vet it out and do all the things that are necessary, and I'd like to have that voted on.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion. Alderman Karen, you had your hand up first.
Thank you. I have no problem taking this back into personnel. I think it is a very complicated process, and I think with some of these amendments is a few more questions to be asked, and we don't really have the answers to that at this point in time. So I don't see a problem with us holding it until our May meeting.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Lopez.
Personally, I'm not in favor of re-referring it, but I would also like to point out the amendment wasn't actually formally made. It was proposed after the meeting, which recommended final passage. So if we're going to re-refer it due to an amendment, shouldn't we make the amendment?
To me, that the bill, the ordinance did come forward and is always open for further amendments. And probably that's why it should get referred back to committee. But I'm going to refer this to corporate counsel, is why he gets the big dollars.
The motion to re-refer takes precedence over the motion to amend. So the motion to amend is not now in order.
Okay. Alderman Laws.
So does that mean that the amendments that were proposed, which were the catalyst for this being referred back to committee, are no longer being voted on tonight?
Well, it depends how you vote on the motion to re-refer. So, for example, if you defeat the motion to re-refer, someone could make a motion to amend.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you re-refer it, nothing prevents the proposed amendments from being taken up in committee. So either way, you can accomplish that objective if that's the will of the board.
Alderman Clemmons, you had your hand up, yes.
Yeah, I was originally going to make the motion to amend, but I have no problem with discussing this further in committee.
Further, Alderman Jettie.
I'm surprised by this. The Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee has had 2 meetings on this ordinance. People have come out and spoken for and against. The committee listened to them. The committee has received as the rest of the aldermen have received letters in support and against. I think I at the last committee meeting, it was recommended for final passage by the committee 3-1. And the one person who voted against it is the person making the amendments, that was going to make the motion for the amendments. I, in response to the objections and in response to the objections made by the person who voted against it, I suggested making amendments to it. Those amendments were discussed with many of you. The amendments were approved by the person who had the objection at the committee. And the amended version was sent to you all, and any questions were asked. I think sending it back to the committee, I'm assuming the three people who voted for it are going to vote for it again. I'm assuming the person who voted against it is going to vote for it now, because the amendments are in response to his objections. So sending it back to the committee, I think, is just going to result in it coming back here with a recommendation for final approval. So I don't see that there's anything to be gained by sending it back to the committee other than delaying it. So I'm against sending it back to the committee. I think that it's ready for. It's ready. I think with the amendments have been and already vetted, and I think that we ought to reject this motion and allow the Alderman Clemens to make his motion to amend and vote on it.
As I cannot entertain that motion because the motion to refer is the high priority, and that's what's to be discussed in this discussion. Alderman Laws. Okay, I didn't recognize who had it. Let's grant the Alderman Clee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Two issues. One is I'm going to probably ask Attorney Bolton, but and maybe I jumped the gun. Maybe I should have asked for the referral after the amendment had been put forward, and if we want to play that game of going that way. But in respect to Alderman Jettie, the truth is that other resolutions that have gone through the personnel, including the one to bypass, a special election, has gone back and forth to the personnel committee, and it's been and talked about in that way. But again, that's another issue. But we do have a precedence, especially with that committee, and I sat there and heard that talked about. Now, you had not voted on that; it was amendments and so on. But the comment that had been made was that they would be vetted out by the committee. And I think there's a lot of changes to this amendment, and I hate to talk before something, so perhaps I jumped the gun. Should I withdraw my motion and let the amendment come forward and then do it, because that's what I'm going to do?
That's up to you, but
Yeah.
you have the right to do that.
Would it be more appropriate? That's what I'm asking, as far as parliamentary inquiry and all that is concerned, or just, I mean, I would prefer just to have it sent back, but if the sticking point is that the amendment isn't heard, but in any case, I think it should go back. I think the amendments that have been sent to us via email, that have been talked about and so on, I think it should be vetted fully, whether it gets voted 3-1. There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes in that particular one, and I think they should be discussed by that committee.
Okay. I'm going to take the liberty to ask a question of corporate counsel. It seems that the good alderman would like to have it referred back to committee, so that the motion she currently has introduced would exactly do that, refer it back to committee, correct? Where it can receive additional amendments.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
That certainly
And
would be
that's what I'd
appropriate
like,
for the
please.
committee
Okay.
to discuss.
Thank you for the
possible
clarification.
additional
Alderman
amendments.
Laws.
I'm just going to say that I'm going to vote against re-referring it. I spent a good part of my weekend negotiating the terms of this and trying to come up to some kind of compromise that everyone could agree with. All of the amendments actually weaken the original legislation. It's not like anything's making it any stronger, so the people who were for it in the first place are probably still going to be for it. And the idea was the people who were against it would be able to come on board by having a little bit of, I don't know, leniency written into the law. So that being said, I feel like the amendments are ready to be voted on by the whole board, and I hopefully have that opportunity tonight.
Alderman Malaysia Goja, Alderwoman, excuse me.
Thank you. I'm not going to vote to refer it back to committee. But that being said, I think that we have had some legislation come forward in the past year where once it got to the full board, there was significant discussion that made members of the board feel like it needed to go back to committee to be discussed. It is also not unusual in my time on this board, as well as on the Board of Education, for what you thought was a finished piece of legislation coming to the board and then finding out that someone would like to amend that at the full board. And it was discussed there, and if the full board felt this was useful and let's just discuss it, amend it, and move forward, we have, rather than taking additional time. So I feel like we've had this. I believe Alderman Clemmons is ready to speak to it based on his earlier comment. And I feel at this point we should just listen to the amendment and then vote the amendment up or down, and then make a decision on whatever comes out of that, an ordinance that's amended or an ordinance that's not amended and goes back to what we had, and then decide where we should go from there. But I guess I just, want to clarify that it's not standard procedure every time someone says, oh, I'd like to amend something that comes before the full board, that it goes back to committee. I think the circumstances have been interesting, especially in the piece of legislation you referenced about filling vacancies. Thank you.
Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to vote to re-refer this. The reason is that I wasn't on the original committee that discussed this. I didn't like that at all. I thought it was it was just full of punishments, and I didn't think that that's the best way to deal with this. I received this amendment in an email, and I liked some of the changes, but I really need more information on this. I can't make a decision just by reading this. I need to hear more about it, and just having it presented won't do enough. I will attend should we send it back, I will attend and listen and participate, because I think there's more in this than should be. And perhaps a few things are missing. So, thank you.
Alderman Lopez.
I just speak to the example Alderman Klee gave regarding re-referral with regards to the election. Personally, I was in favor of re-referring that because it included a public comment, and the public didn't have the opportunity to review it before the public comment changes that were suggested in it, and then some major changes were suggested throughout public comment that I thought bore looking at. In this situation, I think the public has very thoroughly reviewed it. I think there's been plenty of discussion about it, and we had the discussion at the committee level to move it forward. There was a motion to amend it. I'm not personally in favor of the motion, or of the amendment, because of what Justin commented on in public comment, that I think removing the possession aspect of it neutralizes most of the intent of the bill in the context of us being a city, not a state. So I personally am not favorable to the amendment, but I don't see a purpose in re-referring it if we don't even approve the amendment, because we would be referring it with no actual confirmed reason. So in my opinion, the only reason to even consider referring it would be is if the amendment were proposed and then the ordinance were amended. If somebody had second thoughts about the amended version and wasn't sure it was ready to go for a full vote, I could understand that at that point. But at this point, there's no formal amendment, so it could go back to the committee and the amendment dies stillborn.
Alderman Clee.
I'd just like to add one other additional point to it, and it really, it has no bearing on it, but I would like to point out that we are missing 4 members of this board. I don't know, truthfully, I don't know how they would vote, but I think I would like to get a full board on this if we're going to be changing it on the fly. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Tenza.
And so I'll just say that I'm in favor of the proposal. I'm not sure I'm in favor of all of the amendments as they've been proposed. So I would think that tonight, the best course of action for the board is to re-refer to the committee. I'm not sure, I don't know what Alderman Clemens would be proposing, whether it's a wholesale change or a piecemeal change, asking us to consider each amendment from the ordinance that came out of the committee. But rather than go through that process tonight, I think it makes more sense to do that in committee and come back at a later date and see. And I think there were points raised tonight, and I agree with Alderman Lopez that I think many people have said, hey, possession should be to give this, bill the intention that we're looking for. So for those reasons, I support the ordinance, but think we should re-refer it to committee. And I would just say too, I mean, on a number of things, I think, well, if I may ask a question of Corporation Counsel, there's a effective date of this ordinance. Would that have to change at all if we took another 2 weeks and brought this back in front of?
I don't see any reason why 2 weeks would cause the effective date to require a change.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the question.
Roll call.
Roll call? Okay, there is a request for roll call on the vote. Will the clerk please call the roll on 019-037? Alderman Laws.
Are we voting to send it back to committee right now, or are we voting to pass
The
this?
motion before us is to refer it back to committee.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Clee.
Yes.
Alderman Laws.
No.
Alderman Lopez.
Nay.
Alderman Karen.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
No.
Alderwoman Milizi Gola.
No.
Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Clemens.
No.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes.
We have 6 yeas and 5 nays.
Okay, the motion to refer 019-037 back to committee has passed. This will be referred back to the Personal Administrative Affairs Committee and will be rescheduled. And thank you, Alderman Karen. Set the date. Yes.
Have the date of the next Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee meeting so members of this board as well as the public know when to show up?
Right. As the Alderwoman does know, that usually it gets discussed at the end of the meeting, but
getting
it's a
ready to
fair
leave.
question. Alderman Karen, do you have a date certain,
May
please?
6th at 7 PM.
Okay. Could you repeat that? I think I was talking over to the people
Yeah,
at home.
Monday, May 6th at 7 PM.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I do know, I just noticed they were getting ready to leave, so I wanted to make sure our audience.
No, I
heard
agree.
it.
To keep the public informed, point well taken. Thank you. Okay.
Second,
Yes, to the
second
clerk.
second reading of ordinance 19-039, authorizing stop signs at the intersection of Fairmont Street and Charles Street.
Alderman Clay.
I'd like to make a motion for final passage of O19-039.
You heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Ordinance 019-039 is declared duly adopted.
Second reading of ordinance 19-040, establishing Administrative Services Division and Director position.
Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for final passage of ordinance 19-040.
May I correct a good alderman? I think there is something else that needs to be procedurally done first.
As amended, excuse me.
Uh,
Shall I start from the beginning?
Yes, please, and thank you.
Thank you. I move for final passage of ordinance 19-040 as amended.
What I would like, and to the good alderman,
Would you like me to read the whole thing?
yeah,
By replacing it with the proposed amendment made by the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee.
thank you, Alderman.
Thank you.
Okay. We all heard the motion. All those, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Alderman Schmidt. Now the second part, please.
Oh, and yes, and now I can say, I move for final passage of ordinance 19-040 as amended.
Brilliant. Okay. We all heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Alderman Kelly.
I just wanted to comment, I think that the proposed narrowing of scope makes this a little bit more tangible, so I'm definitely going to support this. I still think that we should consider what that chief assessor looks like later on the road, but that's for budget committee.
Okay. Very good. Any other discussion on the motion? Alderwoman Leisha Goja.
Yes, I am going to support this, but I am concerned and am going to be looking at what the impact is of not having a chief assessor. And in terms of it being cost neutral now, I understand that, but I think we also need to look at what a contract with a private firm might cost the city. And so I think that that's something we need to look at moving forward. Do we actually hire someone, or do we go forward with a contract? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Alderman Clay.
Thank you. I want to kind of reiterate what Alderman Melisa Golja said, as well as Alderwoman Kelly had said. I agree. I would like to see a little bit more oversight directly within that organization, but I'm happy to pass this, and as long as we're getting updated reports and so on, and make decisions later as we go on. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion 019-040 is declared duly adopted. Am I in the right place? Yes, yes. Okay, new business resolutions.
First reading of Resolution 19-128, extending and enlarging the Nashville Rail Transit Committee.
Given this first reading, I will assign it to the Personal Administrative Affairs Committee.
Excuse me,
Oh, did I-
additional sponsors?
Oh, yes. Excuse me, new at this.
I know.
Looking for additional sponsors, we'll start over here. Alderman Clee, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderwoman Melisa Goja, Alderman Tenza, and Alderman Schmidt. Thank you. Okay, now I'll get to say that we're going to assign this to the Personal Administrative Affairs Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-129, authorizing the City of Nashua to enter into contracts with Nashua Community College, Riviera University, Town of Hudson, Town of Merrimack, Sahegan Valley Transportation Collaborative, and the Plus Company for transit services.
Okay, looking for additional sponsors, we'll start over here. Alderman Clevens, Alderman Woman Melissa Goja, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderman Karen, Alderman Lopez, Alderman Laws, Alderman Patricia Clee. And I'm going to assign this to the Finance Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-130, authorizing the sale of tax deeded property located at 4.5-6 Canal Street.
Okay, looking for additional sponsors. Alderman Lopez, Alderman Laws. And we'll, seeing this first reading, we'll assign it to the Committee of Infrastructure.
First reading in Resolution 19-131, authorizing the granting of an easement to the Nashua Millyard Associates, Inc., over land located at 2 Pine Street Extension.
Okay. Anybody looking for additional sponsors? Seeing none, given this first reading, we'll assign it to the Committee of Infrastructure.
First reading of Resolution 19-132, authorizing the mayor to enter into a successor concession agreement with Granite Diamond LLC.
Any additional sponsors? Seeing none, we'll assign it to the Finance Committee.
First reading of Resolution 19-133, authorizing the mayor to enter into a memoranda of understanding with Spectacle Management, Inc.
Looking for additional sponsors, we'll start with Alderman Clay, Alderman Laws, Alderman Lopez, Alderwoman Shoshana Kelly, Alderman Tenza, Alderman Schmidt, and we'll assign that to the Finance Committee. New business ordinances.
First reading of ordinance 19-041, adding 2 student members to the Environment and Energy Committee.
And looking for additional sponsors, we'll start with Alderman Schmidt, Alderman Malaysia Goja, Alderwoman Kelly, Alderman Lopez, and Alderman Clay. And we'll assign that to the Personal Administrative Affairs Committee.
First reading of ordinance 19-042, designating the Southwest Conservation Area as city conservation land.
And looking for additional sponsors, Alderman Clemmons, Alderman Malaysia Goja, Alderman Lopez, and did I skip somebody? Alderman Schmidt, please, thank you. If I did, please speak up. And Alderman Clay, okay, no on that. Okay, so we got everybody? Good. Okay, going to assign this to the Planning and Economic Development Committee.
First reading of ordinance 19-043, updating the ordinances regarding the Board of Public Works retirement system.
Looking for additional sponsors? Seeing none, we'll assign it to Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee. Period for general public comment. We have 6 speakers. Again, as what we spoke about earlier, we're going to try to keep it at 15. It's been a long night, folks, but we are willing to hear you. So I will call Stacy Lawton. Stacy going once, twice? Gone, okay. Drew Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan is no longer with us. John Scher is no longer with us, okay. Tom Alseer, not with us.
What are they going to speak at anyway?
Laurie Ortolano.
The mic's missing. Who's that guy? He came back.
You can't trust Corporation Council.
I mean, I trust him more than the other guy.
Thank you.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I was kind of glad tonight I was last and there were people before me, but here I am. So I wanted to share with you, after the last meeting, I went home and did a Google search, knowing very well that what's happened in our assessing office has happened in other communities. Surely we're not the first one to go through a struggle where we're trying to rebuild. And I came up with an interesting article and a transition that happened in Chicago with their assessing office. And Chicago has some areas that are pretty notorious for their crime. And so they've had an assessing structure that has had a tough element to it because their chief assessor is an elected position. And in the office over there, they were willing to accept gifts brought right to the office and donations brought right to the office, which had just become a major issue among folks. And so in comes February 21st or February 19th, a gentleman, highly educated, had never run for elected office, had an MBA out of Stanford and worked 5 years in Russia as a financial analyst in a large mutual fund firm. He wins the election. And he comes in and he has 3 principles that are going to guide his tenure as assessor: ethics, fairness, and transparency. He starts writing executive orders immediately, generates a 100-day plan, which is moving along nicely. I get an email every day from them. And he sets up a visitor's log, which we've done, so that the public would be aware of any meetings with direct level employees or higher people in the office. He wanted to end so-called access to preferential outcomes. He described his work as complex and difficult in the referendum, in a reform of the assessor's office with the objective of taking a complicated system and making it better. Another policy he implemented on a first day in office was terminating any employee who had been hired or had any form of nepotism. He implemented a strict anti-nepotism policy. He looked to eliminate many appeals, and he introduced a number of new staff members, including outside experts he hired from the IAAO, data scientists, and assessing officials from other states. He summarized it by saying the work isn't sexy, but it's very important. And I thought it was interesting because I raised that issue regarding, nepotism in our policy, and I know it struck a few notes, but I think it's very important, especially in an assessing office, because they operate with standards, ethics standards that are additional guidelines beyond a anti-nepotism policy that I think create a problem when there are relatives in an office in that level. I just want to let you know, I did reach out to Larry Boudreau, and he was the one who sent me the policy. I wanted to meet with him to talk about what was going on. And I received a response back that he did not feel a meeting would be productive, and he was respectfully declining any meeting. I do feel that you have some issues with your Human Resources Department that you should address. And the one issue, or the one item I raised with him is, do we know what other departments we have relatives working in or related people? The response I got back is that we have no documentation on that type of information, and because there's no documentation, there's no right under RSA 91A to answer the question, because nothing's in writing. Really, when you create an anti-nepotism policy or any policy and you're going to violate a policy, you should do a manual override. I have a friend who's been a human resource director at a company with 30,000 employees for 30 years. And they were the ones who said to me, you got to have an override. You can't break a policy without an override, and the override should be signed off by the management chain, and it should be fully documented. And I believe in that. I think that's good business, and it's good for the city. And I'm not certain we do have an override policy. I'm not certain all hires are going through human resources so that the screening for these issues can take place. If I had the chance to meet with him, I would have said that I think it's important to send a letter to all department heads to understand who might be in your departments that are related or have a relationship, identify them, identify what their titles are, and do we have a conflict here? And hiring that's handled in non-public session, it's very typical for hiring to be handled in non-public session. I understand that if you're discussing personnel matters. But I know when I was on a board, once we discussed those matters and we knew the individual was going to accept the job, we came into public session and put the nomination into public session and did our vote in public session so that the public would know who we are hiring. My opinion is, if you're going to break an anti-nepotism policy in public session, you should identify that. And you should say, there is an issue here, we've overridden our policies, we have the proper sign-offs on this, and we're moving forward, this is our decision. My feeling is, if you're not comfortable doing that, then you probably shouldn't be doing the hire. Because if you want to keep it a secret and not say it, then maybe it's not the right thing to do. And I bring it up because I happen to have some information come my way that other departments have had hires that are relatives or have relations that have made it into the system without an apparent screening process at all. So I don't think we're living up to our policy, and I think it affects the quality of the work and the process and the product that we deliver here out of City Hall. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I know that Ben wanted details on, I needed to be more detail-oriented, and what I saw was wrong. And all I can tell you is, when I filed my PA 71 with the state, this is the binder I delivered. And it contained many, many property cards, probably 300 pages. I put together a lot of detail because I was so disturbed by what I saw here in the city. I can't come to a meeting like this and address that kind of detail here. It just won't work. Anyone can reach out to me and ask me. If you want to be more educated about the things I'm concerned about, that's fine. The other thing is, the Board of Assessors. I would like to be able to take most of my issues to the Board of Assessors and have them addressed there. I don't think they belong here. But I can't make that avenue work, and it's very frustrating. I delivered a letter on effective year build and concerns with an example on a property card to them 3 weeks ago. It was completely ignored, not even acknowledged for the record. They brought it back last week. They acknowledged it on the record, but with no discussion. And so if you can't get to a substantive discussion on issues that affect the quality of the assessing database and a lot of homes, then what good are they? I tried to track their meetings, and one gentleman is very combative. And so it's very difficult for me because I see an individual who I believe has a personal agenda. And they're not willing to look at the big picture stuff that affects sales chasing, effective year build. These are all letters I kind of had sent to you. MLS correcting, permit captures. We are dealing with valuations, favoritism, and unethical conduct when it comes to assessing properties of potentially influential people. Those are important issues. And if you can't have substantive discussions about those, I really don't know how you improve the quality of the data. All the software stuff you're doing is great, but the software does not create the assessment on its own. The judgments are coming from the people and ultimately the management within the office. And when I look at the Board of Assessors, last year they had 20 meetings, one canceled. The average for those 20 meetings was under 30 minutes, with almost half of them being under 20. They have meetings that are 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 18 minutes. There's a lot of short meetings over there. And I think there's room to up their meetings, take yours down by pushing these issues to them and getting them to respond. So it's super frustrating because they just won't recognize anything. They won't sink their teeth into anything or even acknowledge the need for potentially creating policy. So I think policy is so important on a lot of these issues, and they just won't address it. I felt like we took a huge step backwards last week with the use of the equalization ratio. One member doesn't really believe in it. I didn't even know that was the case, so that was difficult. There was a resident that came in to represent an abatement. I thought it went really poorly for that individual, and you really get this us against them adversarial feel. It's horrible. It's uncomfortable. It was so stressful for the gentleman who came. He was exhausted for 2 days after that whole event. So I hope that there is some way that someone can give some assistance to what's happening in those meetings so that they can become more substantive to work on what I think are the bigger issues. And I know that the city's position, certainly with me, is we've given you tons of time. You've talked to everyone. You're not happy. We're never making you happy. The reasons that I'm not happy is because the substantive issues aren't addressed. They're waved off and told they're nothing, which is ultimately why I created a three-inch binder that went to the state, because I couldn't get any of that really looked at here. And I'm really concerned about what's going on in that office. Management, I think, is very important. I'm super happy that a few of you spoke about potentially a chief assessor or some management in that office. I cannot tell you how important I think that is. And I don't want to hear from anyone here how hard the staff is working. Some work hard, some do not. We have some issues that have to be resolved. All is not equal, and that's just the way it is. And when it comes to HR and our chief position, we don't even have a policy where upper management, the higher level people, check in. We had a chief who, the biggest issue was he wasn't at work. He was at work 20, 25 hours a week. This went on for years. So we don't have a way that our people check in and get recorded to be paid, our top level people. I just find that odd. I ask myself, what other departments do people not come to work and we don't know? To me, if you're not going to come to work, you should call Human Resources. Say I have a sick day or there's a reason. But not just your boss, but this totally fell through, I don't know where. And it went on for a long time, and we really flushed $500,000 down the drain in that position in 3.5 years with benefits and everything else. That's expensive, and it was very damaging. And when I look back at, I'll end it with this comment, and I thought about it last night. When I had my first interface with our ex-chief, and I tried to address the valuation of my property, which at the time was $700,000 a year and a half ago, had a brutal conversation on the phone where he was unrelenting in punishing that it was fair, it was right, there were no issues in his office. I look back at that now and think, how screwed were we? Because this was a chief who knew what the equalization ratio was, and I didn't. None of you probably did either. So when I'm on the phone going, 700,000 is outrageous for the value of my home, that was really the assessment. At the time, the ratio was about 80%. So the sales value of my home was actually 840,000. My home, I was upset at 700, but this guy knew, talking to me, I know a lady here is upset whose home is really, I know what the ratio is, her home has really got a value of 840,000, and I'm telling her, you're fine. Don't bother coming in, I'm not looking into it, don't bother me, you bought it, you own it, pay it, that's it. If that doesn't tell you how much it is us against them when that's going on, and we were totally taken because we didn't understand the ratio. And I've done a lot to understand what that means when you're looking at your value. So, thank you.
Thank you. Remarks by members of the Board of Aldermen. We'll start with Alderman Clemmons. Alderman Schmidt.
I'd like to apologize for the little error that I made earlier. I'm very sorry, everyone. I'll get better.
Very good, thank you. Alderman Tenza, going down line. Alderman Jettie.
I'm a little disappointed that things didn't go the way I expected they would go tonight on the tobacco ordinance, but you know, it's gone back to committee, and you know, I think you all know that that I've spent a lot of time on this. I've done a lot of research. I've talked to a lot of people. I've become you know, quite knowledgeable in this area, not based on my own information, but based upon readings and talking to people. And so if anybody has any questions, I've sent you all emails asking you to call me with any questions that you might have. You know, I think those of you who have talked to me have known that I'm, you know, receptive to suggestions, and I've tried to be very fair in presenting a balanced view of what the information is that's out there. So I look forward to the next Personnel and Administrative Affairs Committee to see if we can come up with a you know, either the original ordinance or an amended version of it that you will all feel comfortable supporting. So I feel that that this is the right thing to do, and I hope that that you all work with me, and you know, and if you have an objection to it, you know, voice your objection to me so I can attempt to meet it. On another note, this weekend I had the opportunity to get on my bicycle and enjoy the great weather that we had, and you know, I have personally encountered. I went through my ward. I've encountered a lot of the potholes that people have referred to, and I encourage people to report those potholes to the Department of Public Works. My own personal experience has been when I've reported them, and it's not because I'm an alderman, it's, I think they react to any report of a pothole, they try to go out there and fix it. And so I encourage people to report those by contacting, it's DPW request at nashua.nh.gov. And And if they don't respond, let me know, and I'll try to make sure it gets taken care of. On a very high note, on my bicycle ride, I was going down Gilson Road, and I encountered a woman who lives in the Tanglewood Drive area with a wheelbarrow, gloves, and trash bags, and she was cleaning up the trash along Gilson Road, all by herself. And, I stopped and introduced myself and thanked her for doing that. And, I hope that I hope to be able to organize to some degree, some kind of a day, maybe in early May, where to encourage residents, especially in Ward 5, to do the same type of thing that this woman was doing. The Department of Public Works has told me that they cannot afford to clean up the roads, even on land owned by the city. They say they can't afford to clean that. So it's up to us residents, as volunteers, to do it. The department will provide us with gloves and bags, and we can just leave the bags of trash, and they'll come and pick it up. So look forward to that, and I encourage all the other aldermen to do something similar in their wards, so that we can help keep the city neat and clean. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Alderwoman Alicia goes, yes.
Thank you. Alderman Jetti's talk about being out in the nicer weather than we were having this evening reminded me, in the past week, I have received 3 reports of bears. And one was in our conservation area.
Started looking so bad.
And I just think, it's the southern part of Nashua, we have parks and we have conservation area, which adjoins conservation area in Massachusetts. So our bears have large roaming areas. There was a bear over in the Maplewood, Cherrywood area who took down some suet feeders and bird feeders, which Fish and Game told us the middle of March should be removed, so please remove those. And there seems to be a bear going up and down the hill between Shakespeare and the Flatley property and Bicentennial School, who has also removed a number of bird feeders. So I would just remind people, take down your suet feeders, take down your bird feeders. The bears are waking up. They're hungry. Keep your garbage closed. And once things are out there for them to eat, if you want to put your bird feeders back up in June, go ahead and do it. But right now, your bird feeders are a feeding station for bears. So just a reminder to be careful, especially if you're out and about walking at night with your dog or whatever.
Fair advice, if giving up on the finch, you want a beer, keep your bird feeder out till you go.
Yeah, right.
Alderwoman Shoshana Kelly.
Yeah, I'll move from bears to chickens. New ordinance is in effect, and I know people are starting to look into it. There is a evening of information for anyone who's looking to do backyard chickens tomorrow night at the library at 7 p.m. So it should be in your mailbox, but we encourage people who are interested in this to come out and learn, the safe way to do this, and hopefully bring this to the community that way. I just want to thank people for supporting both the amendment to get the student members on board at the Energy and Environment Committee. We have a couple students in mind who have really gotten interested in the committee and really brought some great information to us. They're pretty passionate about what they want to get done. So thank you for that. The conservation land, which will be sent, was a legacy of Brian, so I'm excited to see that go through as well. So Saturday, 10 a.m., City Steps is a park cleanup. Myself, members of the Energy and Environment Committee, will be helping Great American Downtown get that kicked off. Last year we had 200 people go out, so I'm hoping for a few more. So come on out and help us. Hopefully it'll be a nice day for it.
Alderman Karen. Alderman Lopez.
So first, I just want to get this out of the way. With regards to the smoking ordinance, I wasn't aware that the ordinance had been altered due to any legal issues with it. That was made, that's what I understood some public comment to be saying, that it had to be modified because it was illegal. I have had no information to that effect. And then second, there is considerable public argument that this is an indictment of the ability of an 18, 19, or 20-year-old to choose. So I just want to clarify, as someone who is a master's level clinician and does a lot of work with people in addiction, that when doctors are talking about brain development and maturity, they're not passing a value judgment on it. I could not think of a better analogy in during the meeting. But basically, they're thinking maturity in terms of like cooking time. Like there's a certain point where your brain is no longer still as malleable, still much more prone to developing pathways. So that's what they mean by younger people are more susceptible to it. It's not necessarily that your judgment is impaired at an age just because of the age. Like when you drink a beer, you're choosing to drink the beverage, but you're not choosing when you get drunk or how drunk you are. That's just happening as a chemical process. So I felt the need to point that out, but there was never really any opening for it. The second thing is just reminding my constituents, many of whom who have seen me repeatedly posting about it. I'm going to be in Honduras next week from Wednesday to the following Wednesday. I will still try to attend meetings remotely if possible, but it's a third world country. Internet is pretty spotty. I'm looking forward to it. It's an opportunity to see people that I've been working with for years, trying to help them empower their community, build their own businesses up and their own opportunities. And it's not very far away from where many people are fleeing from that has been of obvious public concern and has been represented in the news. So there's many ways to do things. Sometimes you can trust the government to do it. Sometimes you just have to go do it. Next thing is Volunteer Day. I was going to mention that, but Shoshana Kelly kind of beat me to it. Great American Downtown has one scheduled for this Saturday at 10. And there have been a number of people cleaning up the trail ever since the snow left. So I want to thank everybody who's been doing that. I know the Rough Riders are out doing the section over by Palm Square, so do not litter there. And I wanted to also thank Mayor Donchis and Director Photo. Residents have been asking for garbage cans on the Heritage Rail Trail and on the Library Walk for some time. And we received confirmation that their garbage cans will be placed there, hopefully in time for the cleanup. So very grateful for that. That's all.
Alderman Clay.
I'd like to address a couple things. First off, my re-referring, I hope you didn't take that personal in any way. I really do feel that some of the things that were coming through that came in that email, I do have some concerns about that, and I would like the committee to address that. But I also want to clarify something that I heard the public state, and I mean no disrespect to anybody who said that, but I don't believe for 1 second that that bill in any way is trying to is an attack on businesses. I believe that it was done in good faith and with good heart. So anybody who feels that anybody was trying to, regardless of how they vote, I don't believe anybody on this committee would attack businesses. I think that they're very pro-business, and I want to get that out to be very clear. In reference to potholes, I will agree with what Alderman Jettie said. I personally have put in, and it was taken care of. But I ask my constituents when they call me to complain about a pothole to use that DPW request. And I get back great feedback. Within a day, 2 days, that pothole has been filled. So I want to commend DPW on that very thing. And as far as bears are concerned, they're not just in the south. I live on the outskirts of Greeley Park, and the bears are out and about, and baby bears are coming out at this time too. So I'm going to ask all members, all citizens of this, you see it, it's fine, take a picture from a distance, do not chase after it, because they are more afraid of you than you are of them, and they will probably go into a crowd, get hurt, and we already know what happened to a bear just within a couple of years ago. So if you really do love animals, leave them alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Lopez.
Sorry, I needed a second turn because I forgot something. I wanted to congratulate Alderman O'Brien for his presiding over us tonight. This is not an easy meeting.
Thank you,
I
Alderman
appreciate the
Lopez.
way you handled the public comment, because there's a lot of people with things to say, and I feel like you gave them a good chance, but you were also pretty fair to the overall agenda.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Alderwoman Shoshana Kelly.
If we're going backwards, Paul Shea just said to remind people that you have to bring your own rakes and gloves and stuff on Saturday.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else in retro? Okay. All right, okay. I would just like to take a moment to express publicly my condolences to Corporate Counsel Stephen Bolton on the passing of his mother. Us Irishmen have this old song, you never miss a mother's love until she's buried beneath the clay, and God, us Irish love our mothers, so thoughts and prayers from the O'Brien clan go out to the Bolton clan at this very difficult time and that you're going through, and I wish you, your family the best of luck. My other thing on a more lighter type of note, thank you for putting up with me on my first time driving untethered. So I appreciate it. You all were great. I think we had a tough meeting tonight, and I think we got it done nicely. So I thank you all. It's been my pleasure serving with you, and it's been my pleasure presiding this evening. But Laurie, you can have your job back. Thank you. Okay. We have a request for a unanimous consent by Alderwoman Militia Goja. Huh?
Committee announcements.
Oh, yes, well, committee announcements. Let's get into committee announcements, yes. Alderman Karen?
There's a special personnel meeting next Monday, the 15th at 7 o'clock, and that is to discuss the charter change for election of members to the various boards. And that's the only thing on the agenda.
Can't think of anything else.
Any other committee announcements?
PEDC will be a week from this evening in the chamber, and we will be starting with a public hearing regarding an amendment to the sign ordinance regarding the size of numbers and letters on the sign. So next Tuesday.
And any other committee? Seeing none.
If I may?
Yes, well, just let me introduce. My excitement was too much to contain, so I forgot the committee appointment. So unanimous consent by Alderwoman Militia Goja, please.
Okay, so you gave me a perfect opening. It's spring. People are getting chickens. They're going to be building chicken coops. Oh. 5 hens, no rooster. And just when you set it up and build it, be aware of the proximity to your abutters.
Put in your limit.
Enjoy.
All right.
You're welcome.
Should I put it on my desk?
You have to make it.
Very good, very nicely done. And after receiving such a prestigious award there, do you have a motion, Alderwoman Kelly?
I would move to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn is in order. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 22:02.